Act 9.2 everybody. Hi, hope you're doing well. Welcome to a weekend video. This one is focused on, yes, Act 9.2. I've got to make this video as quickly as possible because my electrician, Dan the man, is doing the last bit of work for the inside of the house, which is fantastic news. We've waited for this particular day. So I'm in 9.2 at the moment, and I'm going to be showing some footage and talking about some things that are generally some good points, some bad points in all of this, because it seems like Kabam are going away from a structure that they had that was going relatively well and going in a very kind of odd direction with some hypocrisies, or kind of like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's contradictions. That's probably the best way. Contradictions with node setups, or things that they've set up that kind of goes back on itself. And the whole thing about going back on itself is going back to, say, the early days of Act 6. Act 6 has this kind of restrictive nature to it, or did back in the day. Whenever you do certain nodes, or like you have to kind of bring a specific champion, and trying to find specific champions meant that it was quite difficult. A lot of the time you were trying to get certain synergies to find cheese options in order to get you through certain chapters or certain paths or certain fights. It took ages to find an inverted controls based champion, and I'm not saying that that's what we're seeing in Act 7.2, but there's some weird stuff. Let's kind of explain those things. So Kabam are going very much a case of like there's lots of nodes. You can see here's a good example here where we've got like Erudict, then we've got Superpower, then we've got Superpower Turbo 2.0, then we've got Scourge, I think I'm saying Scourge, Cleanse, Unblockable, I know I said Profiterole, Profillerate, Clarify, and yeah, it's more nodier, and that is something that they did really well at the start of like the Act 7s going into the Act 8s, and now we're in like Act 9. It's becoming like very nodey, which is kind of like an old frustration that's kind of being brought to the new, which I mean, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm still working my way through Act 1, Act 9.1, and it is something that I'm seeing that I'm kind of playing Act 9.2. That's got a little bit worse from 9.1, and 9.1 isn't ridiculously bad. It's just there's a lot of reedy stuff, and that becomes a little bit boring. Fights become a little bit longer because there's very specific natures to setup, and that is of course becoming it's a bugbear for me, but of course each to their own with it, whether they like this setup or they don't. Let's showcase some footage and talk about some of the nodes. One of the nodes here is 9.2.1, and this is Elemental, Abrasion, Conflictor, Fighting Dirty, Face Me Coward, Reinforcing Rush. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nodes. Okay, I don't think it's as much as saying 6+ nodes, but it's definitely, you know, a frustration all the same. So with this, you have a multiple option of approach. You've got to either do Rupture, Incinerate, Bleeds, or Degenerations in order to get a shock passive. The shock passive interacts with this one here, Fighting Dirty, because you want to get the unblockable effect off you, so you want to have a shock effect. So off the basis of that, and you do have Conflictor as well. Every 7 seconds, the next debuff activated on the defender is immediately purified. There's a lot of things going on. Also, and I forgot about this as well, Face Me Coward. Your playstyle is going to change because you can't dex. Yes, you can dex, but you're going to have to absorb into the block the special attack because you can't dex. That I don't like. I really don't like that. Yes, okay, it shakes up playstyle, and who you use is going to be interesting. But there's a lot going on with this. You've got the power gain coming up. You've also got the extent of the Rupture, Incinerates, Bleeds, and Degenerations that you'll have to do to get the shock passive, or have a champion that does a shock passive or shock effect. So it limits it. Like my particular take on this, of how I approached it, was Shuri, quick ramp to SP1. SP1 convert over shock passive, and then that helped me out a lot. Some of the other champions that I used, yes, they worked, but it was just a bit stressful to do this, and that's something that I was really hoping with 9.2 and 9.1 as well. Like that kind of stress element is kind of taken away from it, and I just didn't like that as something Kabam were throwing out. Yeah, it's exciting, but not exciting, it's challenging, but then there comes a point of that we're going back to specificity, niche, and limited options to take on things or easily rotate around. I know things are going to be a challenge, but then there's a difference between challenge and going, I'm probably only going to do this with Shuri or Lady Deathstrike or Ultron, but you've got to be very careful with certain champions and approaches with stuff. And if you don't have all three of those champions, you might be a bit scuppered with trying to get this done. So I don't know, each to their own with thoughts of that. I just found with the fighting, is it fighting dirty? No, the face me coward, that it was just like, just a bit over the top, and maybe something that Kabam can look into. Maybe removing over the top might be quite nice, as I just think that, again, things are becoming a bit more stacked unnecessarily. And yeah, you do get your bulwark passive from doing a dash and intercepting, but you've got to rely on the fact that the AI is going to help you and be working with you rather than working against you. Here's another example, which is Wyd Ward 1-2 punch, power snack, down and out, powerful. This is within 9.2.6 as you head towards the end. And there's, again, another thing that I have a little bit of frustration with this is very much Relic or Striker specific, in that if you don't throw it whilst the 1-2 punch has got the petrify, or you got a petrify based champion, or you got a weakness effect on power, sting or slow, it becomes again a problem to say, hey, use some of your fun science attackers. I found that like one of the better ways to take this on, and look, I'm not going to go, oh, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to moan about it. I'm going to give stuff a go. And one thing that I did give a go is using Mr. Fantastic with the She-Hulk synergy to get a power sting. That helped out a lot, but trying to access this from a point of just doing it off the bat, you cannot do it without a striker. I tried Titania without a striker, it just was not playing ball. There, because you need to do the striker in order to activate, where is it? It's on Wilted. Yeah, there it is. So Wyd Ward, every 14 seconds a defender gains a protection passive, because you need to remove the protection passive, otherwise you're doing no damage. All protection passives are removed whenever the defender is struck by a striker while they are inflicted with a petrify, wither, or suppression effect. So you can't do this path without a striker. It's kind of, you have to do it, which I'm not a massive fan of the you have tos. I like options and being available to do stuff. There's also favourite champions that I'd like to use that kind of play into the 1-2 punch science-based champions. I'm thinking, oh, great if I could use them. Well, I can't unless I can, but it's going to be rough. But I can if I have a specific synergy or a specific pre-fight, and that didn't really kind of resonate well with me. I know that there are champions like Photon, Titania with Relic do this path fine, but again, two specific champions. And yeah, there are others, but I did find that like it was very restrictive rather than being quite open, and the rotation was kind of annoying. I think as well with Power Snack, whenever the attacker triggers a buff, it is immediately nullified and the defender gains 100% of a bar of power. That I didn't like, and I just felt that that was an added extra that if Command didn't need to put Power Snack in, you will get Dexterity pop up. You will feel then restrictive to go, well, I'd like to use Spider-Man 2099, but I can't use him now. You can use him on the path, and I would recommend with an SP3 rotation, because you have to go against Spider-Man Cosmic. That is good for the path. But again, I found that my roster was shrinking with being quite niche and specific, which is the problems and the issues that I didn't like before with how the story mode was going, and how maybe like this is again becoming quite narrow with options, which yeah, ain't good. I do have quite limited time in order to access and play a bit 9.2. I do plan to do a bit more, but I'm just like speaking from my perspective of trying out some of the paths as opposed to some of the bosses. Some of the bosses are okay. I know some people are annoyed about the Shuri boss. There's also other people annoyed about other bosses, so I definitely resonate. I've tried 2 of the bosses so far. But yeah, it does feel to me it's like someone's getting like like choke. I kind of feel like I'm choking because I got like a narrow amount of options that are going to be good without being opened up with synergies. Yes, it's a challenge. Yes, I know content in MCOC has got to be a challenge, but that's taking away from what story mode has evolved into and going back to what it was, which is, it's not happening with this one, but it feels like we're going down that particular path and direction. Anyway, thoughts in the comments about this, about where you feel you're up to with it. I just found it was too nodey. I felt there were extra nodes that are being added that didn't really need to be added in. Power snack being one of them. Another one that was being mentioned about, what was it? The dexterity one that just shuts off. I just thought, you don't, anti-dex is not worth it. It's just not worth putting in. But thoughts if you've played 9.2 and whether or not you feel it's a scary kind of change, and how would your approach be? I'm still going to cover content on it, but I just wish that Caban would kind of look at it and go, well, maybe we could have like tuned down or removed certain nodes instead of like having 5 or 6, that it's just 4 per one, or maybe less, but that ain't it. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.